So real quick, where do we find experience? I'm gonna ask a lot of questions I'm sure have already been answered.
So you're like the experience tracker is in the adventure log, which is linked through one of the Discord resource channels.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it's like tracked of like your total and your amount per session. And then, is that what you're asking, or are you asking like where in the book?
Yep, no, I found that. And then how do we spend it? Where it's probably in the book, but which page?
Right.
Page 39, I believe.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Something to be said for physical books. I find it's hard for me to navigate in PDF, to be honest.
Yeah. If you like know exactly what you want.
Did you say 34?
39.
39.
I broadly like physical books. I broadly prefer physical books, but I think that I'm willing to accept the.
As a 3-5 player, I both love physical books, but deeply admire searchable PDFs with bookmarks.
Yeah, the searchability is pretty good.
The having like 12 books in 2 separate piles on either side of you with a character sheet when you're trying to make like a level 5 character was
hero system books. I like GURPS a lot. It's got an undeserved reputation for being super complex. It's kind of like a lot of use every single damn supplement.
Almandan, you are so unbelievably correct, and I appreciate so much that you are making this point. You cannot believe the number of. I wish my camera was working so you can see how I am. I've had so many arguments because you're right. You're exactly right. If you're going to use every blessed thing in the entire system, it's going to take forever, and it's going to be. But if you take the parts that are.
I think we lost you there.
We lost you.
You just dropped again.
And so I built in beta mechanics for them.
Okay.
Sorry, you'll pardon my prattle. I'm.
In fairness, Jackson Games, I mean, like, yes, you can absolutely run, a fantasy game or a sci-fi game, and character creation and running the game is no more complex than any other RPG. But especially with 4th edition, I mean, Steve Jackson Games, Dr. Crom creates these templates, a 562-point template with like 13 different options, and it they really did not do a good job of presenting a user accessible, newbie friendly entry into the game. I mean, they tried with GURPS Lite, which never. I mean, it's right. But people don't really use it. So, and then you look at something like GURPS Vehicles, which really is, it's for people that like designing things with spreadsheets, which I do, but most people don't, and it's not a good way to convince somebody that, no, this game is not that complicated at all, really. So, but yes, absolutely. If you've got an experience to use, 15, handing people a stack of 15, to choose all their character creation options, it's not that complicated.
I agree completely. Can you hear me again? I just had to unplug everything. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you.
My group was so emotional about GURPS for so long that I actually created a merger of GURPS and Fate that was kind of halfway between the two. I called it Hate because my first name starts with H, and then so it was Hal's acceptable role-playing system, which I enjoyed quite a bit. Or I don't know what E stood for. Ignore me. But I think I'm very funny and witty and smart. So I can't get my camera to work. I've got to keep trying.
It's okay. You can just be like me, antisocial, camera shy.
I'd love to, despite being the largest man on the planet, I don't mind being. Oh, here we are. I think you're dead. That ought to fix it.
Yeah.
Does that fix it?
Yep.
Perfect. I love when playing.
Episodes of my 600-pound life lately, so no, I don't think so.
Well, fair enough. Life's challenging, isn't it? I don't know. I'm not. I don't mind appearing on camera. I'm just another dude, you know what I'm saying? But it's all fine. I'm astounded that another human being enjoys GURPS, if I'm entirely honest. The amount of arguments I've gotten into. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up.
It's GURPS, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And
like, it requires some very light addition, which I think is what puts most people off. But anyway.
Math is scary.
Oh.
Don't play 3.5.
So some people.
Holy cow. Yeah, I've had to, for like the new players, I wanted to start them out in one of the, not quite as bad as second edition, but something pretty heavy so that every other RPG game they may dive into is just a simpler form of what they already know. Like even then I've had to just like cut a bunch of math out. Just like there are too many instances of +2, +4, -2, -4.
Pathfinder and 3.5, I think, are actually some of the more challenging systems for character creation once you get beyond the first level.
Definitely.
For new players, especially.
Oh yeah, big time. I leaned heavily on the fact that I've been playing it for over a decade, so. That and I had like pre-generated 4th level characters, and I was like, hey, here's 8 of them, there's 6 players, pick one. And you can double up on any of them.
Makes sense. I mean, we have to make it accessible to new people, right?
Right.
Otherwise, the hobby just dies. So.
Yeah.
And it's not like this, you know, I mean, in a lot of ways, this is kind of like, back in the day, we've always had storytelling for our entire civilization. Even before the idea of civilization was even there. We'd all take mushrooms and sit around a fire and explain what the gods did do.
Hell yeah.
The only distinction between that and this...
He wrote Numenera.
Yeah, Numenera was definitely a strike against him. My real problem with him was when he opened up his jaw and ate that 5-year-old. That was too far as I was concerned. But yeah, I also hold Numenera against him. And the thing that he tried to remake the World of Darkness into for no knowable reason, I don't understand Monty Cook at all. And he did eat that kid, so you know. I'm never going to back off from eating that child. He didn't really, you know.
Right, is everyone preset on experience?
No, apologies.
No worries.
I just sent you the fast shooter clip. It says like it doesn't need to ready a weapon before. With that mechanic
Right,
we're thinking of.
That prevents even needing the quick draw. You can just snapshot.
Okay. So picking up a new talent is... Let me pop back. 30's bank experience for a while. But I don't get killed by falling off a cliff being charged by a giant boar.
Okay.
We're not doing initiative card.
Oh, I was thinking about doing it for like maybe like really important fights or duels or stuff, but I think it's just a lot. It's a cool concept.
Yeah, someday when people are playing face to face again, I mean, I've got the whole Kickstarter, all these beautiful books and the cards and stuff out on the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely doing it backwards by like hacking Forbidden Lands into something else for main campaign someday.
Funny thing is, at one point I was considering like hacking the fantasy trip and doing hot springs islands using the fantasy trip.
Okay.
You know, I haven't looked into the fantasy trip. Is that good? Is it actually good?
So if you like GURPS, you will recognize a lot in the fantasy trip because it was Steve Jackson's first game, and he basically took a lot of what he did when he created the fantasy trip and used that to create GURPS. So the basic system is very similar with, most of it is roll 3d6 under to do things, and it's a 3 attribute character system instead of 4. So you might consider it sort of a lighter version of GURPS. For people that are afraid of GURPS, it's a very GURPS-like system, but it's specifically for fantasy, although people have hacked it for science fiction and other settings.
Gotcha.
And yeah, now if you're coming from a GURPS background, there's a lot of small differences that you've got to pay attention to. But I would actually, if you wanted to introduce people to a GURPS system, and they're the sort of people who are afraid of GURPS or intimidated by its reputation, you might actually start with the fantasy trip. And if they like that, then you could introduce them, with GURPS.
Noted. Good. And it's got that old school flavor. It's got that dungeon crawl flavor that we all want.
Old school game. I mean, back in the day, it was one of the rivals to first edition, AD&D. It was never anywhere near as popular, but it had a following. It never really made it big, partly because of company troubles and stuff. Like for years and years, Steve Jackson wanted to buy the rights back because he was working, for another company at the time. So Metagaming owned the rights, and the owner of Metagaming, even though he was no longer publishing anything, and the company had been basically dead for years and years, would not sell the rights back for a reasonable price. And then, like a few years ago, he finally agreed to sell them back for something Steve could afford, and he bought the rights back, and then he did this big reissue of the Fantasy Trip as a new edition, and now it's acquired quite a following.
That's good to hear. I didn't want to buy in because, I buy everything that they put out because I have to support GURPS, and I was very hesitant about picking up something new, but I don't know if people are actually if it's actually developed a following, then I kind of owe it to myself since I'm such a fan. Huh. That's cool, thank you.
I'm on the fantasy